Hey guys, I'm Tyler and welcome back. Today we are going to make some library bookshelves. First things first, we got to break down those big 4x8 sheets of purebond plywood. It is critical to cut order, so pay attention to the plans so that you don't run short on material. You cut the shelves first at 11 and 13/16, and this is to take into account the backboard that you'll add later on. The sides of the shelves are a full 12 inches wide. I am going to be using the table saw to put a rabbet down each side of the side boards. I'm using the table saw as it cuts down on an incredible mess if you use the router. I set the depth of the table saw to allow me to take out about 3/8 inch of material, and I did 2 passes to give me a nice rabbet down the side of the board. I am using all purebond plywood from Columbia Forest Products, who is actually one of the sponsors of today's video. All of their plywood is manufactured right here in North America and is formaldehyde free, which is much better for your health. You can find purebond exclusively at the Home Depot. After finishing the rabbet on the table saw, I cleaned it up with a utility knife, and here you see we have perfect depth for our backboard. Now we don't need the full 8 foot for the sides of the shelves, so I used some blue painter's tape to tape them together for 2 different reasons. One, so I can cut both at one time, and secondly, to cut down on tear out. And I made that cut perfectly straight using my rigid cordless circular saw in a DIY made track. People often ask me why I don't have a 12-inch sliding compound miter saw. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, it takes up too much room. Secondly, if you have a table saw and an accurate crosscut sled like this one that I'm using from Rockler Woodworking and Hardware, you don't need that big compound miter saw. The table saw makes those crosscuts just as well and saves you a ton of space. Once the shelf boards are all cut down to their proper length, I used my Kreg jig to drill pocket holes in 3 of the boards, which will make up the top, middle, and bottom portion of the shelves. And now on to one of my favorite jobs in the shop, edge banding. I used some iron-on red oak edge banding to make these plywood boards look like solid wood. I find that it's much easier for my workflow to sand everything down to 220 grit before assembly. First step in the assembly is to glue and screw on the toe kick to the bottom shelf. I'm using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch coarse pocket hole screws. The outer frame is assembled much the same, using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch screws. This video is sponsored by Rockler Woodworking and Hardware. Create with confidence. Once the outer frame is assembled, I used measurements from the plans to mark out where I needed to drill the pinholes for the rest of the shelves and where the middle stationary shelf needs to be glued and screwed into place. I used a Rockler right angle clamping block to make sure I had everything nice and square before permanently screwing it into place. Yes, I agree with you, it would have been simpler to drill all the pins for the shelves before assembling the frame, but you know, sometimes you get lost in the moment and you gotta do it later. I used my Rockler shelf pin jig to make sure I had nice, even spacing for all those pins throughout the shelf. You don't see in the video, but I'm actually building 2 of these shelves, and for the 1/4 inch backing I'm using some offcuts from the other shelf so that I don't have to purchase another 1/4 inch sheet of purebond plywood. It would be better to have one continuous sheet back here to add a lot of strength to the back of this shelf, but the 2 portions that I'm using will work just fine. If that's what you need to do, it'll work perfect for you as well. The backboard is put into place using wood glue and 23 gauge pin nails. Pin one side into place, measure to make sure you are perfectly square, and then nail away. And for the finish, I'm going to be spraying on several coats of tinted water-based top coat. Using a tinted top coat, you got to be very careful with spraying as it goes on a little bit more like paint and you can have darker areas if you're not careful. But it saves an incredible amount of time and I have had great success with this in the past. This pair of library shelves is going in our living room, and once I got them into place, added some spacer boards along the top to take into account the trim. I then used an L bracket to bolt it into the studs so that these would never tip over. Well, that is a wrap right there, folks. What an upgrade from the old particle board flat back shelves to these bad boys. These will last us a long, long time. We're one step further to having every piece of furniture in the house built by yours truly, and we actually have more room on these shelves for future books. Check out the link down in the description below if you guys would like to download the plans for these shelves. You can build these with good quality plywood for about 70 bucks. You can go a little bit cheaper if you want to put some hardboard on the back and save yourself a couple bucks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hammer that thumbs up button. Helps us out a ton and gets this video in front of more eyes. I'm DIY Tyler. You guys have a good one.